welcome to Narayana IAS. This is Sureka Bhaskar presenting to you the daily news analysis. In today's discussion, we'll be discussing a number of topics taken from The Hindu and the Indian Express, which are both important and relevant for the UPSC CSE examination. Now, let us have a look at the topics. The first article has been taken from The Indian Express under the explained section, consumption survey 5 questions. So this particular article talks about the recent findings of the all India household consumption expenditure survey, and here we'll be looking at the trends and the transition of the consumption expenditure of the Indian households. Moving on, the next article has been taken from page number 9, the Indian Express, in poll year a data question. So this talks about the role of big data in shaping the electoral dynamics. So moving forward, the third article has also been taken from the Indian Express, page number 8, that is an open book. So this particular article discusses about the CBSE's recent proposal on testing the feasibility of conducting open book examination for students from class 9 to 12. So moving on, we look at the next article that has been taken from page number 13, WTO Meet, where we'll discuss about India's ambitions and aspirations to arrive at a permanent solution with respect to its public stock holding of grains and the recent contentious issues that is undergoing regarding India's subsidies in the WTO. Moving on, the last article for discussion has been taken from The Hindu, that is the Kerala capital sees massive turnout of devotees for Attukal Pongala, and this actually talks about the annual festival of the Attukal Bhagavati temple, which is located at Thiruvananthapuram in Kerala, where thousands of women from Kerala and abroad have actually gathered for the festival. And towards the end of the session, we will actually practice few prelims as well as mains practice questions. Embark on your UPSC journey with Narayana IAS Academy. Our esteemed 5-year and 3-year integrated programs are now open for admissions in Hyderabad, Vijayawada, and Nellore. Our courses include robust research and development backed initiatives such as our daily news analysis, which gives us a comprehensive view program for a broader understanding of current affairs. Our NCERT program, a foundational course that covers all NCERT syllabus, which is crucial for the UPSC preparation. And followed by this, our mentorship program for personalized guidance and regular test series for systematic learning and assessment is available for your subscription. So begin your journey to becoming a leader with Narayana IAS Academy today. The first article that we'll be discussing about is Consumption Survey 5 questions. So this actually talks about the recent release of the broad findings of the All India Household Consumption Expenditure Survey that has been released by the government, and this particular survey had been conducted for the period of August 2022 to July 2023. So in this particular article, we'll be discussing about the Household Consumption Expenditure Survey, that is the HCES survey, and this actually can be mapped to Indian economy under prelims, and under mains it can be mapped to GS paper 3, economic growth and development. So if we see the previous year questions, there had been questions in the year 2022 on the culture of consumption in the mains exam, and there has been a question in 2014 in prelims that reads, if the interest rate is decreased in an economy, it will. So the implication of one parameter and what impact it will have on the other parameters on the macro economy is actually very important for the examination. So moving forward, let us actually understand this particular article. Okay. So, for the first time in about 11 years, the government released the broad findings of the All India Household Consumption Expenditure Survey that was carried out between August 2022 and July 2023. Here it is important to understand what is this Household Consumption Expenditure Survey. So let us actually understand what is this particular Household Consumption Expenditure Survey. It is important to know that it is a comprehensive study that has been conducted by the National Statistical Office, that is the NSO, and this aims at measuring the spending patterns of the Indian households. This is both the urban and the rural. And this particular survey focuses and examines on the expenditures on various goods and services that have been incurred by the households. Okay, so the frequency of this particular survey is typically every 5 years. That is, the recent one has been conducted in 2022 and 2023. However, the data preceding this were conducted, and it was actually collected in 2017-18, but was withheld due to data quality concerns, and that was also a period of demonetization in India. So what are the insights that are provided by this particular survey is that it provides insights on the consumption expenditure, the standards of living of the people or the households, the poverty levels, the income distribution, their dietary patterns, etc. Now, if we see the recent survey that has actually been published, it is the latest iteration that covers August 2022 to the period of July 2023. And here, the previous, as I told you, the previous data that was collected in the year 2017 and 18 was withheld due to data quality concerns. And I also told you this was a period of demonetization in India. And also, it is important to understand that the household consumption expenditure survey, as the name reads, it reveals the trends in the average monthly per capita consumption expenditure. So, moving forward, let us understand the major findings from the HCES survey 2022-2023. Okay. So, the first one it actually talks about is the decline in the food expenditure, a 2-decade overview. It is important to understand that over the past 20 years, Indian households have experienced a notable transition in their spending habits. So, the allocation of household budgets gradually have shifted from being predominantly, earlier it was what? Predominantly food items. But now it has actually transitioned to an array of goods and services. Okay, so let us actually see this with the help of a graphical representation. So if you see this particular table, here it is a percentage share of food in the monthly per capita expenditure. Okay, so here this blue color is the rural area and this orange is the urban area. If you see in 1990s, that is 1999 and 2000s, the expenditure on food was actually 59.40, which has decreased to how much? 46.38 percentage. And similar is the case of the urban areas, which was 48.06, has now considerably declined to 39.17. Okay, so now let us actually understand what are the factors which are driving this particular change. Okay, so let us quickly run through all this data here. So there has been a 20-year spending shift, as I told you that the spending has transcended. Earlier, the allocation of the budgets of the household were predominantly based on food, and now it is focusing on an array of goods and services, which includes entertainment as well as other services. Okay, so earlier it was highly spent on food, and now it has diverse goods as well as services. Okay, now if we see the rural and the urban trends, this can be taken from the graph. Here, the food expenditure had actually declined from 59.4% to 46.38%, and in the urban areas, it has declined from 48.06% to 39.17%. And what are the change drivers is, the first one can be definitely economic growth. How? Because there has been increased household income. So, when the household income increases, your financial capabilities expand. So, when your financial capabilities are expanding, then the proportion of spending on food ultimately reduces, as you will actually focus on other consumer durables as well as services. There are other materials like clothing and non-food items, okay? And then we have transportation, then services related to entertainment, etc. And also the second one is, there will be diversification of needs. That is what I told you. We will transcend from the basic food to the non-food items such as entertainment services, etc. And the final one is improved standard or quality of living. Okay, so the decline in the food expenditure is what it is actually reflecting a percentage that the total spending on the food has actually decreased, right? And this shows the increased aspirations of people for a better quality of life. and this seems to transcend the basic needs. So there is always a difference between needs and wants, right? So the aspiration to have a better quality of life is actually forcing people to transcend the basic needs towards the direction of having or acquiring more wants. So this is what is actually told here. What are the change drivers? First one is the income growth, that is there is more money, there is an increased financial capability of the household, thereby there is less expenditure or percentage of money that is actually spent on food. There are diverse needs, that is diversification, a rise in the non-food purchases like the durables, clothing, services, entertainment, transportation, etc. And next one is aspiration to have a better standard of living, which is beyond the basic needs and moves towards a better quality of life. The next major finding is evolution of dietary preferences in Indian households. Okay, so this particular survey, it also talks about how the dietary patterns of the households have actually transcended, that is the Indian families have transcended towards more nutritional as well as diversity in their diet. Okay, so the first one we can see is there has been a decrease in cereal consumption. The cereal happens to be the staple intake for Indian families, right? So there has been a decrease there, and there has been a decrease significantly in the rural households, followed by the urban households, we will see. And then we will see there has been an increase in high value nutritional items such as eggs, fish, fruits, vegetables, etc. And what are the indicators which will actually are the drivers of this particular transition. So here we can actually understand with respect to that of the table, this shows a percentage share of the monthly per capita expenditure in the rural areas. So this actually refers to the 1999 period, where the consumption of fish, egg, meat was actually 3.32, whereas in 2020 to 2023 period it has actually risen to 4.91%. And similarly, if we see the consumption in the urban areas in 1990s period, it was 3.13, that has actually increased to 3.57. Okay, so here let us actually understand with respect to the explanation that is given here. I told you that there has been a change in the food consumption. The trend is it actually has moved or transcended from uptaking the staple food cereals to more diverse diets as well as improved nutrition. Whereas you see in the rural areas, the consumption of cereals has decreased from 22% to just 4.91%. Very, very important. There is a huge decrease. And if you see the urban areas, there has been a decrease from 12% to 3.64%. However, the next one, if you see, there is an upturn in nutritional spending. That is, there has been a changing shift towards consumption of more proteins like the eggs, fish, meat, fruits, as well as vegetables. Okay, and the rural rise is that it has increased from 11.21% to 14%, and the urban increase had also been there from 10.68% to almost 11.17%. Okay, and here the dietary diversity indicators, that is, what are they saying? There has been a shift, that is less cereals, more variety, and the reason for this is it shows that there is an increasing awareness about health, food and health, increasing diversity. It shows that there is increased disposable income, because of which the families are able to afford foods that contribute to a balanced diet. Now moving to the next key observation of this particular household consumption expenditure survey, that is the necessity of revising the inflation basket. Okay, it has found that what happens, there has been shift in the household spending patterns, we saw, right? Household spending patterns have actually shifted, and these are not adequately reflected in the current CPI baskets. So what are these CPI baskets? CPI actually stands for Consumer Price Index. So this is an indicator of inflation in the economy. Okay, so there is a weightage which is given to each product that is present in the CPI basket, such as food and beverages are actually given a particular weightage, housing is given a particular weightage, and then and other miscellaneous items, fuel and light are actually given particular weightages, and based on these weightages the inflation in an economy is actually reflected or it is calculated, and based on this RBI carries out its inflation targeting. So this particular survey has found out that there has been a shift or a rapid or a huge transition in the household spending, and that has not been properly or accurately reflected in the CPI basket, and which eventually will pose challenges to the monetary policy. Now let us look at this necessity of revising the inflation basket. Okay, so there has actually been a CPI mismatch. The issue is that the CPI baskets don't match the current spending habits, and there have been weightage discrepancies. If you actually see here, the CPI for cereals and products is actually marked as 12.35, and for the urban is marked as 6.59. However, in reality, the cereals weightage, which is marked as 12.35, we saw that it has actually had a gradual and a huge decline to 4.91% over a period of 10 years. And also if you see CPI urban, there is actually a similar thing, okay, which has actually been observed by this particular survey. And next one is, what is the implication this will have on the inflation measurement is that if the CPI basket is outdated, it will compromise the accuracy of inflation measurement, and this will skew your monetary policy decisions and economic analysis. And also, for good economic stability and for making informed policy decisions, this perfect and accurate reflection of CPI is very, very important. So that is what is told here. The concern is inaccuracy in CPI will affect the monetary policy and economic analysis, and the need is for precise inflation data and for stable economic policy making. Now moving on to the next key finding of the HCES survey is that this particular survey had actually found out that the monthly per capita consumption expenditure across various states have variations. How? If you see, states such as Chhattisgarh, Jharkhand, Madhya Pradesh, Odisha, Uttar Pradesh, etc., they have this MPCE figures far below the national average, thereby indicating a lower standard of living in these particular states. And also, there are found to be geographical disparities in economic well-being. Geographical disparities in economic well-being. Okay. So there are differences here, and that is actually reflecting various levels of access to resources, your employment opportunities, social welfare programs of your states. Thereby, it actually shows the overall quality of living. So let us actually look at all these here. So the state MPC as well as the living standards, the survey insight is that the survey actually states that there is a vast state by state MPCA monthly per capita expenditure differences, and certain states like Chhattisgarh, Jharkhand, MP, Odisha and UP have a MPCE which is actually below the national average, and if we see, there is a huge geographical economic disparity. The issue is because of unequal resource access as well as opportunities, and the result is that there is varying life quality across different states. Okay, so what are the policy implications is that we need state centric economic as well as social policies, that is the policies, social or the welfare policies have to be tailored as per the needs of the states, and focus is on income, infrastructure as well as services improvement. And how do you tackle these kind of inequalities is that there has to be a targeted development approach in the low performing states when compared to the better performing or the higher performing states, and there have to be huge investments in education, healthcare, skills as well as rural growth. The next article that we will be discussing about is in poll year a data question. So this particular article discusses about the role that the big data plays in changing or shaping the electoral dynamics. Okay. So in this particular article, let us actually understand what is big data and what role does it play in shaping the electoral dynamics. Here we'll also discuss about the dimensions of transparency as well as accountability, and we'll understand about what is big data analytics. Okay. So this can be mapped to GS paper 2 under mains, where we can talk about it under transparency and accountability, and also GS paper 3 where it is a part of science and technology development and their applications and effects in everyday life. So moving forward, there have been previous year questions in mains. For example, in 2017, there was a question which was actually asked on the quality of democracy in India in the Election Commission of India, which has proposed the electoral reforms in 2016. And in 2018, there were again questions on the elections as well as the voting. Here, you have to understand that the Election Commission is a constitutional body. The constitutional office is held by the Chief Election Commissioner and other election commissioners. Their eligibility, the criteria, and from where they actually draw their salaries and allowances are important. Okay. So the next question in 2018 was regarding the controversy which was surrounding the use of electronic voting machines and what were the challenges before the Election Commission in order to ensure the trustworthiness of elections in India. So overall, election as a topic is very, very important for the examination. So moving forward, let us understand this particular article. As India approaches its general elections, that is the 18th Lok Sabha election is actually due in the month of May 2024, and in this particular context, the role of big data and how it actually shapes the electoral dynamics has become a focal point of discussion. So before moving further, let us actually understand what is this particular term big data actually mean. So when you look at this particular infographic, we will understand that big data is nothing but it is enormous amount of data and various types of data which can be in any form, either an image or it can be an audio or video, meme, etc. that is collected for a certain purpose. Okay, especially during the election processes, the voter, to analyze the voter behavior and the demography of the voting population, it is actually collected by using the big data. Okay, so the three V's or the three important V's or components of this particular big data are: number one, the volume; number two, the variety; and number three is the velocity. Okay, so under volume, we'll actually understand that this is enormous amount of data that reaches a few terabytes to dozens of terabytes or more. That is, it is huge or enormous in capacity. Okay, and the variety includes there are different forms, that is data can be in different formats, okay, such as the documents, images, audio, video, as well as the search and browsing history. So these are also a different, these are also the variety of data. The next one is the velocity, which actually gives the real time updates on what is actually happening. Now let us understand the role of big data in electoral dynamics. Okay, so the first role is that micro targeting. So utilizing this big data, that is huge or enormous amount of data, the political entities or the party can dissect the entire electorate into small segments based on your political leanings, the issues of interest, as well as your past voter behavior, and this will allow for highly personalized campaign messages. Okay, for example, if this is actually the electorate and if one group of people are concerned about the environment, one group of people are against the ruling party, or one group of people are those that had voted for the opposition in the previous election, and one group of people are extremely rational in their thoughts, Okay, so collecting data about the voter behavior, what happens is that the political entities can dissect the entire electorate into smaller segments, and thereby they will actually send you ads or any information relating to your area of interest. Okay, for example, if you belong to an age demographic of 18 to 25, and if you haven't voted in the past, and if you are of the age where you are either studying or if you are seeking a job, then what happens, your voter behavior or the data is actually captured, and you tend to get ads, reels, memes relating to that of the studying opportunities that the government will give, as well as the job opportunities that the present government is actually giving you, or what the opposition has not offered you. So this is what is the micro targeting means. Okay, so here we will see there is actually a role of the social media platforms over here. Of course, we know that it is to reach a wider audience. It is of course to reach a wider audience. Then there is a collection of vast amounts of user data. That is why they use the different social media like Facebook, Instagram, then WhatsApp, as well as YouTube, Snapchat, etc. And there are micro targeting strategies here, and according to your lineation, or you can say according to your inclination, it is customized to the preferences of the individual voters. Thereby there is effectiveness of political campaigns. For instance, political ads on environmental concerns, as we discussed a few minutes before. The second one is the voter engagement. The big data tools can identify potential supporters more efficiently, enabling the targeted engagement strategies from social media ads to direct text messages and emails. So this is what I told you. If you are of the age demographic where you are either studying or seeking a job, then ads related to that actually comes to your inbox. Moving forward, predictive analysis. Okay, so what is predictive analysis? Parties use big data and artificial intelligence in order to predict the election outcomes. They know what has been the trend, what is actually the voter base talking about, inclined, what are the policies that attract them, whether what kind of tailored campaigns we have to run for them. All these things are analyzed through big data by the political parties, and through this they can predict the election outcomes, adjust the strategies in real time, and also allocate resources more effectively, focusing on the battleground areas. Battleground areas are nothing but your concerned electorates. Okay, so moving forward, if you see the case study, that is the Facebook Cambridge Analytica scandal, I think all of you would have been aware. This was a 2016 scandal. Okay, so this Cambridge Analytica was a British political consulting firm. This used a third party application. It used a third party application in order to collect personalized data, especially from Facebook via quiz, etc. And it also connected to friends of friends through Facebook. Okay, so thereby it exploited the Facebook's data sharing policies at that time. This particular data was actually used to build sophisticated psychological profiles of voters. And after this, these profiles were then used to micro-target the political advertisements and influence the voter behavior in various elections, most notably the 2016 presidential elections, and it is also said to influence the Brexit referendum to an extent. Okay, so this actually has brought a lot of concerns among the public regarding the privacy, data protection, the influence of social media on elections and democratic processes, and thereby leading to a huge public outcry. There were huge legal inquiries into this. There were a lot of government investigations in multiple countries. Okay, so this is a case study that you can quote while writing your exam, or when they ask the impact of social media in your essay or something, you can quote this as an example. So this is it. Moving forward, what are the challenges posed by big data in electoral dynamics? Let us actually understand. Okay, So looking at this infographic, the first challenge, as I told you, is the privacy invasion. Okay. So there is extensive data collection without the consent of the individual user. This affects the privacy and trust. The second one, there is lot of misinformation as well as manipulation. That is, micro targeting leads to manipulation and misinformation. Next one, there are polarization and echo chambers. Okay. That is, there's a use of social media algorithms that will exacerbate the political polarization. What do you mean by echo chamber? It is nothing but there are creation of specific groups where a person will encounter only specific informations or opinions that reflect and reinforce the same. For example, if I like the education agenda of the government, then what happens through this echo chamber? Specific groups are actually created where I will get only information, data, ads, reels, images with respect to that of my ideals as well as the reinforcement, so that I stay inclined to that political party, or this is what is called as voter behavior. Okay, so this is how they influence. The next one is data security risk. Here, the potential breaches will actually expose the sensitive voter information outside. And next one, there are a lot of regulatory challenges also. That is, development of big data technology outpaces the regulatory frameworks that are in place. And finally, it impacts the democratic engagement. Okay, that is, data driven targeting. This may disengage the voters and it might undermine the political or the democratic processes. Now let us look at the possible way forward. First one is enhanced transparency. That is, political parties and platforms should disclose how they collect, how they use and share the voter data, thereby allowing the individuals to make informed decisions about their participation in the electoral process. Next one is consent mechanisms should be followed. That is, voters must have control over their data with clear options to opt in or out of data collection and micro targeting practices. The next one is the accountability, that is algorithmic accountability. There should be transparency about the algorithms used for micro targeting and the content distribution, ensuring they do not amplify bias or any kind of misinformation in the form of hate speech or anything like that. Next one is data minimization. Data collection should be limited to what is necessary alone or specific electoral purposes, reducing the risk of misuse. The last point is strong enforcement and redressal mechanism, where the implementation of the Data Protection Act should include provisions for stringent enforcement and accessible channels for individuals to seek redressal against any kind of violations of their privacy. The next article that we'll be discussing about is an open book that has appeared in the Indian Express. So this talks about the CBSE, that is the Central Board of Secondary Education in India, which has initiated the pilot study on testing the feasibility of open book examination for students from class 9 to 12. So in this particular article, we'll be discussing about the need for educational reforms and what are open book examinations, the different types of it, as well as the National Education Policy of 2020 and what are its objectives and aspirations are. And this can be mapped to mains DS paper 2, where it is mentioned as issues relating to the development and management of social sector services relating to health, education as well as human resources. So moving forward, there have been a number of previous year questions on education. That is, one can be the status of higher education in India, then educational reforms in India, as well as national education policy of 2020. So education becomes a very, very important topic for the examination for both the prelims as well as mains. So let us see the previous year question. There has been a question in 2020 that talked about the national education policy. Similarly, if we see in 2015, there was a question on the quality of higher education in India and what are its requirements. And moving forward, in 2016, there had been a question on the importance of educational reforms in primary education specifically. Okay, so now let us understand about this open book examination that has been proposed by the CBSE. So, the Central Board of Secondary Education, that is the CBSE in India, has initiated a pilot study in order to test the feasibility of open book examination for the students for classes 9 to class 12. Now, moving forward, let us understand what is the significance of this particular move. It is seen as a significant step towards reforming the education system as it aims to move away from the traditional or the conventional type of examination, which is based on the elimination system. Okay, so it is a significant step towards the reforming of education, and it aims to move away from the traditional elimination based examination system, as this particular system is set to impart or is set to impose the higher levels of exam related anxiety and pressure in students. Okay, so this pilot study that the CBSE has proposed, that is to conduct the open book examination, is scheduled for particular subjects in the month of November and December, and the subjects include English, mathematics and science for ninth and 10th class, as well as English, mathematics, as well as biology for 11th and 12th class students. Okay, so this particular policy or the recommendation of the CBSE is set to be under the national curriculum framework that was proposed by or brought about by the CBSE last year, and also is set to align with the national education policy of 2020 that focuses on encouraging creativity among the students as well as to avoid rote learning of children. Okay, so it aligns with the NEP 2020's vision of encouraging creativity not only to students but also from teachers, and focuses on mentoring and facilitating students' learning at their own pace. And this is set to increase or assess the students' analytical abilities. So, moving forward, let us understand what is an open book examination, whether it is actually easy as per our preconceived notion or assumption, what it is. Okay, so characteristics of open book examination. Okay, so what is an open book examination? It is an exam which allows you to carry the reference material into the exam hall. Okay, so where the students can use the books, can use the notes as well as study materials to actually write the examination. What are the types of open book examinations? It can either be restricted, where only specific materials, that is the study materials that have been approved by the exam conducting authority, is allowed, or it can be a free open book examination where any material that is deemed relevant by the students can be carried into the examination hall. Now, if we look at the question structure, it is designed to encourage the application of concepts. That is, there is no more reproduction of the facts on your paper. Okay, so here it is actually encouraging the application of the concepts that you have learned from the books, and it actually assesses your analytical skills and your capability to understand and apply a particular concept. That is, it tests your comprehension, it tests your broader perspective as well as your analytical skills. And now, looking at the difficulty of the examination, contrary to the popular opinion, that is, the popular opinion says that open book examinations are very easy to crack, but contrary to that, it is not easier than the traditional examination, as it tests the learning beyond the facts that are produced in your book. And also, apart from that, setting questions for the open book examinations can be challenging for the teachers. So, moving forward, let us actually understand, is open book examination a new concept that has been introduced in India or not? Okay. So, if you see, the open book examinations are not a new concept for the Indian students, as this kind of examination was introduced by the CBSE earlier in 2014 in its open test based assessment, that is OTBA plan of 2014. However, there was a discontinuation of this particular plan in 2017-18, as it actually did not create or cultivate any analytical skills among the students. Okay, and however, this is common in higher education because the All India Council for Technical Education actually allows for this kind of testing. There are a lot of central universities like the Jawaharlal Nehru University as well as Jamia Millia Islamia that had conducted these open book examinations during the pandemic. A lot of IITs actually go for this model. And also, if you see, Kerala government or Kerala Ministry of Education had also recommended this particular form of open book examination as a reform of their higher education. So, moving forward, what have been the research observations on open book examinations and whether the qualifying rate was higher or not when compared to the traditional examination is important to understand. So, if we see, The research has actually observed that there has been a significant stress reduction among the students. So, a 2021 study among the medical students at AIIMS Bhubaneswar had found out that open book exams tend to be less stressful for the students. And the next one is it talks about the feasibility as well as the acceptability among a number of students. That is, a pilot study published in Cambridge University Press in 2020, it showed that there was a pass rate of about 78.6% with only 21.4% failing in the open book examination. And also, when we listened or when we heard the feedback from the students, they highlighted the stress-free nature of this open book assessments, and it is a significant advantage for reforming the education system. And the last point is what is the impact it has on the skill development and performance. So, research in the Delhi University or among the students of the Delhi University, it revealed that the mean marks that have been obtained in the open book examination when compared to the traditional rote learning examination was higher in these kind of exams. The next article that we'll be discussing about is WTO Meet, India to push for permanent solution to public stock holding of grains. So in this particular article, we'll be discussing about India's push or its aspiration for a permanent solution with respect to its public stock holding of grains for its food security in the upcoming 13th Ministerial Conference of the WTO, that is the World Trade Organization. So in this particular article, we'll be discussing about the categorization of the subsidies on their potential to distort world trade and how it has been classified by the WTO into different boxes like the blue box, the green box as well as the amber box. And then we'll understand India's public stock holding program and what is the issue of contention that has been taking place in the WTO. And we can map this particular topic to GS paper 2 mains, that is under effect of policies and politics of developed and developing countries on India's interests, important international institutions as we are discussing about World Trade Organization, as well as agriculture under GS paper 3 as we'll be discussing about minimum support price. So moving on, there have been previous year questions in the UPSC mains examination regarding the key areas of reforms of WTO that it has to be done in order to survive in the present context of trade war. And next one, in 2016, we have a question on the broader aims and objectives of the WTO in order to manage and promote international trade in the era of growing globalization. So moving forward, let us actually understand this particular news. India is aiming to push for a permanent solution to the public stockholding of grains for food security at the upcoming 13th Ministerial Conference of the World Trade Organization. So here it is very important to understand the public stockholding of grains program of India. Okay, so this is a critical component of the food security of India, and this program aims to achieve certain objectives like providing minimum support price to the farmers, to stabilize the price of food grains, and to distribute the subsidized food grains to the poor through mechanisms such as the public distribution system. So here we will understand why this particular program is being contested by the WHO and the associated members. Okay. So what is India's public stock holding program? Let us understand. It is a critical component of India's food security system that has been designed to achieve multiple objectives such as ensuring minimum support prices to farmers for their produce. Second one is stabilizing the price of the food grains, and the next one is distributing these food grains to poor at subsidized rates through the mechanisms such as public distribution system. Also, this program is essential for safeguarding the livelihoods of millions of farmers and ensuring food security for a substantial portion of Indian population. So moving forward, let us understand why is this particular public stock holding of grains program being challenged at the WTO. So before understanding this particular issue, let us actually understand in detail of how WTO has categorized its subsidies. Okay, so WTO has categorized these subsidies based on its potential to distort world trade. So, The subsidies have been categorized by WTO on their potential to distort world trade into: one is green box, next one is amber box, and next is the blue box. So over here, if you see this particular infographic, here we can understand the subsidies that do not distort trade or that cause minimal disruption to world trade are placed under green box, and it does not have any particular limit like 5%, 10%, etc. However, if you move to the amber box, it actually has a broad range of subsidies which is limited to 5% of the agricultural production. That is, in order to understand it better, that is, all the member countries of the WTO are allowed to provide, domestic support to their farmers. Okay, that should not exceed 5% of the total agricultural produce, and this 5% is actually 10% for the developing countries, whereas for the developed countries it is 5%. Whereas if we come to blue box, we can see it has a broad range of subsidies which are specifically designed in such a way that they do not cause any kind of trade distortion, or they are designed to minimize the trade distortion. And like the green box, here also there is no particular limit on the subsidies which are characterized over here. Okay, so now why is this particular program, that is the public stock holding of food grains program of India, facing a problem at WTO? Okay, as I told you, under the WTO agreement on agriculture, the member countries are limited to providing domestic support, including subsidies for food stock holding, not more than 10% of the total value of agricultural production. And this 10% has been fixed based on the 1986 to 1988 levels of agriculture. So this has been fixed based on 1986 to 88 levels of agriculture, or these are the reference prices. Whereas if you see India's PSH program, that is the public stock holding program, particularly the MSP scheme, that is the minimum support price that the government provides to the farmers, it is actually breaching this particular WTO subsidy cap that has been set at 10% by the WTO of total agricultural production, which is based on 1986-88 reference prices. And this, there is a counter argument to this. See, while WTO says that it has to be 10% and that India is actually breaching, the counter argument is there has been no updated percentage fixed since the 1986 level, and post 1986, due to different economic situations as well as agricultural growth, the cost of production has increased, and also the inflation has been there. Okay, so that is what is written here. So these reference prices, due to inflation and increased production costs, have been high, and that is why India is at a risk of breaching this particular cap of 10% that has been set by the WTO. Moving ahead, the second reason, or the second reason why it is actually challenged by the WTO, is that the market distortion. Okay, so some WTO members are arguing that any kind of large scale procurement and stocking, that is stock holding of the food grains by the government, can distort the global food markets, and this will impact the trade fairness. And also the next one is risk of WTO disputes. Okay, so what is it saying is, if India's PSH program is found to increase the cap that has been set by the WTO, it can actually lead to a dispute settlement process. Okay, and this could potentially result in India having to alter the PSH as well as the MSP policies, which are crucial for food security and farmer welfare. So moving ahead, the next point for which it is actually being challenged is, it is a temporary peace clause. Okay, so currently India actually operates under the peace clause which has been agreed upon in 2013, that is the Bali Ministerial Peace Clause, and this particular peace clause, it's shielding India temporarily from any kind of legal challenge at the WTO. However, it is not a permanent resolution. So these are the challenges that is facing this particular PSH program of India in WTO. Now let us see what is the way forward in order to address these particular challenges. The first one is permanent solution negotiation. So as we know, India is actually aspiring for a permanent solution at the WTO for food security programs. So if India does that, this will provide greater flexibility for the other developing countries in order to pursue their own food security programs without having the fear of breaching the threshold that has been in place or put in place by the WTO. Okay, so this involves updating the base reference prices from the 1986-88 levels. Okay, so this, that is, the upgrading prices must actually reflect the current economic reality. So that is how it has to be done. The second one is reform as well as diversification. Okay, so domestically, if you see, India can actually explore reforming and upgrading and diversifying its agricultural policy rather than solely based on the MSP as well as the PSH programs. Okay, so this kind of diversification includes enhancing productivity, investing in food processing, and encouraging crop diversification. And the last point is strengthening international coalitions. Okay, so India can actually strengthen the international coalitions with other developing countries which are facing similar kind of issues. Okay, so they can form coalitions with developing countries at the WTO. So this will ensure global trading system that accommodates food security needs. The next article that we'll be discussing about is Kerala capital sees massive turnout of devotees for Attukal Pongala. So this particular article talks about the annual festival of Attukal Bhagavati temple situated in Thiruvananthapuram, where thousands of women from Kerala and abroad have gathered. So in this particular article, we'll be discussing about what is this particular festival or tradition of Attukal Pongala, the temple architecture surrounding this particular temple, as well as the culture or the narrative behind observing this particular festival. So this can be mapped to history of India prelims, and under mains it can be mapped to Indian culture, salient aspects of art forms, literature and architecture from ancient to modern times. So moving on, if we see previous year questions, there have been particular questions specifically targeted at the temple style of architecture, that is the Nagara, Vesara as well as the Dravidian style of architecture, and also on specific features of the temple. So if we see first question which had been asked in prelims 2012, we can see the Nagara, Dravidian as well as the Vesara style of architecture being questioned. And next one is in 2019, there has been a question on a specific feature of temple architecture, that is Kalyana Mandapas. Okay, so moving forward, let us actually understand what this particular Attukal Pongala festival is all about. So thousands of women from India and abroad had gathered for the annual festival of Attukal Bhagavati temple, which is situated in Thiruvananthapuram, the capital of Kerala. So now let us understand this particular tradition of Attukal Pongala. Okay, so this particular temple, that is the Attukal Bhagavati temple, celebrates Pongala, which is a festival that spans over a period of 10 days. Okay, so here Pongala means to boil over, and it is a ritual where women prepare a sweet or a food item that is called as payasam in the earthen pot. So what is payasam? It is actually a pudding kind of a dish which is made with rice, milk, jaggery, coconut as well as bananas. Okay, after being done, this is offered to the goddess or Bhagavati. Okay, she is also called as the Attukal Bhagavati, and she is believed to be the divine incarnation of Kannagi, the protagonist whom we've actually heard about in the Tamil Sangam period of epic that is called as Silappatikaram. Okay, so here Kannagi happens to be the wife of Kovalan. Okay, so this entire festival is actually based on the injustice that was rendered by the Pandyan king to Kovalan, as a result of which Kannaki, that is Kovalan's wife, had destroyed the entire place of Madurai and has moved to Attukal for taking rest before she moved on to Kodungalur. Okay, so here Attukal Bhagavati, a divine incarnation of Kannaki, the protagonist of the Tamil epic Silappadigaram. The lore, that is the entire tradition or the story, talks about the injustice to Kovalan, as a result of which Kannaki had destroyed Madurai and had took rest at Attukal before she moved to Kodungalur. And here there is a musical rendering of the story about the destruction of Madurai as well as the Pandyan king in the Kapuketta ceremony of this particular festival. So now let us understand about the temple. Okay, so this is dedicated to goddess Bhagavati, and you know the annual festival of this Attukal Pongala, it actually talks about the triumph of righteousness over malevolence. So what do you mean by malevolence? It is nothing but the winning of good over evil. Okay, so this particular temple is also called as the Sabarimala of women, and this temple attracts the biggest crowd of women devotees for the annual Attukal Pongal festival. It has also made a record in the Guinness Book of World Records, where it has actually attracted over 1.5 million women devotees in the year 1997, followed by 2.5 million devotees in the year 2009. Moving forward, the temple is built with elements of Kerala architecture style as well as Tamil architectural style. That is why it has gopurams and all these things. And the main building also comprises of the other goddesses like Goddess Kali, Goddess Parvati, Lord Shiva, Goddess Sri Rajeshwari, and several others. So moving forward, let us have a quick look at the Kerala style of architecture. If you see this particular image, this is the Kerala style of architecture, where it is significantly different from the other temples which are in the eastern coast of South India. So let us see. So this particular Kerala style of architecture displays certain variation in its plan, its elevation, as well as also the materials which are actually used for its construction, that are significantly different from other temples on the eastern coast of South India. And this variation is due to the distinct climatic region that this particular area, that is the state of Kerala, hosts, and the usage of different building material, that is there is a luxurious use and the predominant use of wood, and this signifies the abundance of dense forest in Kerala. So there is lavish use of wood followed by stone as well as metals, and the base structure is made of granite as well as laterite, and also the roof of this particular Kerala style of architecture may have a 1, 2 or even 3 stories. Okay, and the shape of the roof depends on the plan of the sanctum, which is also called as the Garbhagriha of the temple. And then the steep and the needle like roof that you can actually see here, this is the needle like roof, is made up of wood and is covered with copper plates in order to protect the inner skeletal framework from the vagaries of monsoons. Now let us solve few prelims as well as mains practice question. The first question reads, consider the following trends from the All India Household Consumption Expenditure Survey 2022-23. There is a significant decline in the share of food items in the total consumption expenditure in both rural and urban areas over the past 2 decades. Yes, this is correct. There is an increase in spending on high value nutritious food in the urban areas and a decrease in the rural areas. This is wrong. Chhattisgarh, Jharkhand, and Madhya Pradesh recorded the monthly per capita consumption expenditure levels below the national average. This is correct. Since only statements 1 and 3 are correct, the answer will be option B. Only 2 statements are correct. Moving forward, the second question reads, the term echo chamber, sometimes mentioned in news, is associated with which of the following? As we already discussed, it is reinforcement of beliefs within closed communication systems. And here the answer will be option D. The third question, consider the following statements regarding the WTO's classification of domestic agricultural support. The first statement is green box subsidies have to be government funded, not by charging consumer higher prices, and must not involve price support. This is correct. The next statement is the development box under Article 6.2 of Agriculture Agreement is exclusive to developed countries. No, this is wrong. So going by the options, the answer will be option A, one only. Moving forward, the fourth question, consider the following statements. India is a founding member of the WTO. Yes, this is correct. The membership of the United Nations organization is mandatory for joining WTO. This is wrong. The next statement reads, contribution by members to the WTO's budget are determined according to their share in international trade in goods only, not services. No, this is also wrong. So since only the first statement is correct, the answer will be option A. Moving on to the fifth question, consider the following festivals: Losar, Ugadi, Attukal, Pongala. फिर भी சொல்றேன். The fifth question reads, consider the following statements: Losar, Ugadi, Attukal, Pongala, and Vangala. These festivals are celebrated in various parts of the country. Arrange them in the order from north to south. Here, Losar festival is celebrated in the Kashmir regions, Ugadi in Andhra Pradesh, Attukal Pongala, as we discussed today, it's in the Kerala region, and Vangala is in Meghalaya. So, going by the options from north to south, the answer will be B, that is 1, 4, 2, and 3. Now let us solve a mains practice question. The question reads, in the context of the recent proposals by the CBSE, critically analyze the concept of open book examinations in the light of National Education Policy 2020. Evaluate its potential impact on the Indian educational framework and student assessment. So here the approach answer to the question has been divided or broken down into introduction, body and conclusion. In the introduction, we have to start by defining the open book exam and also reference the CBSE's recent proposal for implementing the same from classes 9 to 12. In the body, we will start with analyzing the OBE in light of the National Education Policy 2020, where we will discuss about the National Education Policy's emphasis or objective on understanding over rote learning and how OBE aligns with this particular vision. Moving on, we will evaluate how open book examination can foster critical thinking, application based learning, and analytical skills as envisioned by the National Education Policy 2020. The next one is, let's talk about the advantages of open book examination. Like, we will assess the advantages, like it reduces the stress and promotes deeper understanding of concepts among students. And also, we will highlight the potential of OBE to transform the pedagogical practices. This is nothing but the method of teaching practices, encouraging more interactive and student centric teaching approaches. Moving on, we will discuss the challenges and concerns in the body, where we will critically examine the potential challenges like ensuring academic integrity during exams and readiness of infrastructure to support this particular type of examination, and also analyze the concerns of exacerbating the educational inequalities due to varied access to resources among the students. Next is, we will discuss about the impact on the educational framework and the student assessment. Here, we will predominantly discuss the potential changes OBE may necessitate in the curriculum design, in the type of teacher training, and the overall educational ecosystem. And finally, we will conclude the answer with a balanced view on the adoption of open book examination, considering its alignment with the National Education Policy of 2020 and the National Curriculum Framework that was brought about by CBSE last year, and the need for careful implementation of this in order to address the associated challenges. With